Yeah, I've read them all.
What? You probably know them better than me.
They're the only books I ever read from start to finish. I remember the first time I heard about you, I was at school and I'd just been told I was dyslexic, and there was a poster of you up in the head teacher's office, and it said Benjamin Zephaniah, dyslexic, talented man. And she was like, you need to be like him, you need to be more, you could be him one day. And so yeah, my mum bought me Gangster Rap.
Right.
And I still remember the poem. There's like two poems in it. There's a poem at the end. I wanted to ask when you wrote it. It's the one that starts like, the twisted irons that men have made bring murder to our streets, and when the makers have been paid, they blame our hip hop beats.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but I don't know if you wrote it for the.
No, I wrote it for the book. You see, the thing was, I was doing poetry, and then a editor at this publishing house. Actually, she was with Puffin Books, and then she went to Bloomsbury.
Fancy.
And she said, would you write a novel? And I said, I'm not sure about that. And she kind of convinced me. And I wrote my first novel, Face. I think my second one was Refugee Boy, and the third one was Gangster Rap.
Yeah, I've read them all.
What? You probably know them better than me.
They're the only books I ever read from start to finish.
But the thing was that, especially when I started Face, because I was so well known for kind of political poetry and campaigning and all that stuff, everybody was expecting a kind of Black Brixton novel kind of thing. And I thought, no, I want to show people that I can write. I want to kind of base it on a white guy, 15-year-old. Yeah. And the other thing is, you see, I was probably like you. When I was at school, I didn't like books. I was dyslexic, but I didn't even know the word dyslexic back then, right? So I hated books. I say I hated books. I just looked at them and I looked at how big they were, and I was like, that's hard work. You know what I mean? I've got to read every word, you know? And so I know how difficult it is. So when I start writing books, I always start by thinking, right, remember the 13, 14, 15-year-old Benjamin. What would you have liked to have read? And that's how I start. That's why Face starts with joyriding. I'm into that kind of thing.
But something that catches you from the off.
Yeah.
I found out with books, I hated, I don't know, I still kind of have a weird, I don't know, enemy situation going on with books, because it's not something that I lend myself to, which is strange, because people think because I'm a writer, that books is the first thing I go to, but I struggle with it. And I guess it comes from, just from words not coming as easy to me, especially to read them.
You have to understand that learning to read and write the way we do is a very artificial thing.
How so?
Well, there's one language that's a living language that you can't be dyslexic in. Can you think what it is?
What?
It's Chinese. Why? Because it's pictorial. All the early languages were pictures. It's crazy to have a squiggle that represents a sound. But if you read in Chinese, the word for roof looks like a roof. You know, the word for lady looks like a lady.
It's ridiculous.
You know, and all the early languages, a lot of them were pictorial. I guess, you know, some academic can pick this apart. But the idea of seeing something that represents it, that looks like it, is what human beings do naturally. The idea of having a squiggle that represents a sound is kind of something you have to learn. So, which is why, you know, what you have to realize is that, and this is really important, rap, poetry, even storytelling, and even poets, like, I'm not sure if you're aware of people like Leonard Cohen. These people come from the oral tradition. That's what we are part of.
Of course.
The written tradition is a modern thing. We've been telling stories to each other and reading poems to each other for thousands of years, at the dawn of mankind. You know, so you should not feel we're inferior or anything like that. I think we're kind of superior. And I mean, most dyslexic people are really sexy. That's a start anyway. But, you know, no, I mean, most of them are really creative because they see the world in other ways.
It is. It's the idea of the outside the box, completely. It's like my mum is a teacher for kids. I think my mum is really to thank for me being introduced to, and I guess, and probably in what I do now, because she teaches kids with special educational needs. And so I was lucky because when I was at school, as much as the teachers didn't really understand it, because it was quite a new thing still, you know, the idea of being dyslexic or having ADHD, and she understood it a lot deeper than most, and so I had this kind of self-understanding from young, but it still didn't help me. It's crazy. I've never ever thought about that. The idea of writing, and that, you know, that is something that's been man-made. That doesn't necessarily make complete sense. Obviously, it makes sense, but. Yeah, I would love it if every word looked like if a roof looked like a roof.
Look at all the cave paintings and drawings. They're all telling stories.
Yeah, but they are. It's interesting.
The education system is, you know, teachers, a lot of them try their best, but a lot of the time, especially when it comes to dyslexia and other, I was going to say disorders, but other conditions that young people have, sometimes they're catching up, and sometimes things just don't have a name. You know. I mean, when I discovered I was dyslexic, look, I wrote a book called Pen Rhythm. Yeah. It was, I was in Birmingham, come down to London, punk was big and everything. I wrote this book. I didn't even know how to write it properly. A girlfriend kind of wrote it out for me. Yeah. And people were talking about it. Yeah. And then they talked about it on television. And I remember they called me a writer. I went, shit, they called me a writer. Yeah. I can't write, you know. And I went... A guy called Ken Livingston used to have adult education classes. He used to run the GLC, the Greater London Authority. Yeah. And he had adult education classes. Yeah. And in these education classes, you just pay £1. Yeah. And just learn.
Just £1?
Yeah, for your lesson. Yeah. And I went to one, and I was the only guy there. Yeah. They were all girls that got pregnant when they were 13 or 14, had missed their education, and then gone back to it, you know? Yeah. And I was there kind of studying, and they were going... I remember one day somebody went, didn't I just see you on Top of the Pops? You know what I mean? But I just felt that I had to catch up on my education. And I'll never forget that a woman said to me, sorry, I beg your pardon, the teacher said to me, she said, I think you're dyslexic. And I was like, you want to fight? Were you calling me names? Calling me names?
Yeah, it's exactly what I said.
Because it sounds weird, doesn't it?
It still feels offensive to me. It's weird. I guess the social connotations of it are different now. But I remember when I was told I was dyslexic, I was like, I'm not stupid. Yeah. I understand words I like, you know. Because I used to hate, I don't know how you ever felt about Shakespeare. When I was at school, I used to hate Shakespeare. I used to think it was the worst thing. I know the worst thing that I learned at school. And then it wasn't until I saw Romeo and Juliet in a production. I think it was on. I think it maybe was on in Brixton or maybe in Peckham, but it was like just in a little theatre, and it was because I was experiencing it the way it was meant to be experienced. And I think it's the same with poetry.
It's interesting that it's funny when you said I hate Shakespeare. I was going to say, you know, he was an all right man. Yeah. But I know you mean the work. It's not personal. Don't you? I hate Shakespeare.
It definitely wasn't personal.
No, the same thing for me. When I was growing up, there's a whole lot of names who were dead white men poets. Yeah. That wrote things that had nothing to do with our lives. We were getting beat up by the police. We were getting, you know, the National Front and all that. We were struggling against apartheid. You know, I was like, what did they write about us? What's that got to do with us? And a friend of mine in Wales used to organise poetry readings called Bob Mole, strange name, sat me down and played me Macbeth. And as he was on a video, and as he was playing it, he explained to me what was going on in the country at the time, put it into context. And I'm like, wow. This brother's bad. You know what I mean?
For real.
And how he's using the language. Yeah. And, you know...
And making up his own language and pushing the boundaries of language.
He's doing what... I was going to say what we do, but, you know, if there's an emotion or something and he hasn't got a word for it, he makes one for it. Yeah, you
completely.
Know? And the accent, the rhythm was the rhythm of the time, you know? It's like if you wrote something now that says, you know, Zephaniah Dread went to dance and the beats were kicking. Yeah. In 100 years' time, they're going to say, Zephaniah Dread went into a dance. How did you go into a dance? A dance is something you do. Yeah. And the beats were kicking. What does it mean the beats were kicking? Yeah. You know, we know what that means now. Mm-hmm. And the same thing when Shakespeare was around. People didn't have to sit there working hard and deciphering it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I think that's the thing that's always frustrated me about it is when I used to study it at school, is that, you know, it was being dissected in a way it was unnecessary. And I even found that when we were studying poetry. I know we studied some of your poetry at school and other poets like Langston Hughes, etc. Yeah. And it was the whole idea of reading something and looking, and I don't want to say looking too far into it, but, you know, there's sometimes it's not meant to be dissected, it's just meant to be experienced and enjoyed. I don't know how you feel about that.
Sometimes you get a meaning from a poem and it's not the meaning what the writer meant. Yeah. But it gives nobody the right to come and tell you that you're wrong. You know, this is what you take away from it.
Completely.
And you know, I've got loads of stories about people interpreting my poetry strangely or differently, or something that I don't really like that much. I remember once I was filming, making a movie with Alexis Hale and a woman called Beryl Reid.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you remember her?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Filming in West London.
Yeah.
And this great big Nigerian guy comes up to me, and I can't do a Nigerian accent, but he comes up, he says, "Are you Benjamin Zephaniah?" I said, "Yeah." And he went away, and he came back with a book of mine, a book of poetry called The Dread Affair.
Yeah, yeah.
And he said, "Sign it for me." And as I was signing it, I was like, it's not a very good book, actually. You know what I mean? I've written a better one since that. And he just looked at me and went, "How dare you?" And he said, "This book brought me back from the dead." And I thought, wow. You know, this book really meant something to him at a time when he was really low. Yeah. And who am I to come and tell him, you know?
Yeah, but it's mad, but it's crazy because the thing about it is you create and you move on. Yeah. But for some people, that might be the only thing they've been experienced to, and they might not even know who you are in, you know, outside of just that book. Do you know what I mean? You forget that. I don't know. It's not the same with me.
I was at Latitude the other day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What day were you there? Oh, yeah. Fuck, say no, I missed you. I definitely missed you.
I can't remember.
Yeah, we were there. We were only there the last
Actually,
time.
I'm not talking about this year. I'm talking about 2-3 years ago.
Oh, no, I'm talking about WOMAD.
All right.
Because you were at WOMAD this year, weren't you?
Yeah. I was at Latitude as well. But that's another thing.
It's another song.
WOMAD. Your mum was there.
Yeah, she saw you.
Yeah. I saw her. I'm joking.
Steady. I tell you, shit, if you caught eyes, like, I'd have seen you the same. She wouldn't have stopped talking about it. I don't know if I know I'm a big fan, but I know my mum is a big fan. And if you're watching, mum, leave it. I'll tell you what, though, if you ever want to go for a drink in Croydon with my mum,
Croydon.
You are the one man I'm allowed to take her for a drink. No, it does have to be Croydon.
Croydon. My sister lives in Croydon.
Okay, cool.
No,
I hang out with her.
I was at Latitude the other day. Let's bring it back.
Yes.
I'm coming out to the performance. Some people are taking me to a book signing, and this girl's trying to get to me. And security are holding her back because they don't want her to get to me to sign. They think she wants me to sign something. And she can't get to me, so she runs in front of me. Yeah. And then she's got her back to me, and she pulls up her top, and she's got one of my poems tattooed on the whole of her back. I said, "Are you crazy?" And she said something like, "You give me life," and she kind of danced into the distance.
Amazing.
Like, gosh. So when you create stuff and you put it in the public domain, you must understand it's the public domain. It's there. Yeah. It's gone.
It's interesting. Kate, a girl called Kate Tempest, I don't know if you know.
Yeah.
She, I was having a chat with her recently, and she said the same thing to me. She was saying that, you know, all the albums, all the poetry that she's done and she's put out, now she feels like it no longer belongs to her. Yeah. And as soon as she, you know, takes it from her book, records it, and puts it down, that's it. Gone. And once it's out, it's not hers. And it's for people to do with what they want. And it's a weird thing that I'm getting used to. I think I'm trying to understand it because. It's nothing to do with me anymore because I don't have any control over it. Where it goes, who listens to it, what they feel when they listen to it.
Even when you're doing music, I remember when I did a track I did with the Wailers, Free South Africa, and you know the record, because it was a record at the time before CDs and downloads and all that. You know, it made some noise, but there was a little bit in it which I didn't quite finish, or something that I meant to change, and I didn't change. So when it started playing on radio, that bit would grate me every time I heard it, because I knew that I wanted to go back and just tweak it. Yeah. But it's gone.
Yeah, nothing you can do about it.
So I call it quality control when I tell my students that you have to reread your work and rewrite it. You know, the same thing when you're recording a piece of music, you gotta don't let it go until you're happy with it, because it's gonna haunt you. For the rest of your life.
Yeah, I have that. There's loads of stuff on this album I just put out earlier this year that's different or that's wrong, and I guess
no, that's perfect. It's a perfect album. No, I've heard it, man. It's perfect.
That means it means more than you can imagine. But to me, it's ridiculous. But it's weird because you think, you know, people listen to it. No one has any idea. It's only me who knows. It's only you when you listen back to that tune. Yeah. Everyone else is probably hearing it, sitting next to you, go, "This tune's huge." Yeah. But all those things don't matter because the perfect bits are the perfect bits, and that's great. And they're not the bits that concern you. It's that one bit that you could change. I think that's the way you got to keep pushing like that.
And you know, I had an album once when I was with a rather big record label, and they gave me all the money I wanted. Yeah. And on that album, there's some great musicians credited, but it was the album was the kind of biggest flop for me in Britain anyway. It was all right in America. Yeah. It was just too polished. It was too overproduced. You know, there was no rough edges.
And that's the most important part.
Yeah.
But how do you? But okay, so how do you feel like you could find rough edges in something that's not? If say, because in poetry, I guess it's a bit looser, but say in a novel, because that has to be quite polished, no?
I don't think you find them. I think they happen naturally, and then you just leave them.
Yeah.
You know, you've ever done something in the studio, and you wasn't expecting, you go, oh, that works.
Yeah. And just leave it be.
Yeah, leave it. Yeah.
Which is the hardest thing to do.
Sometimes,
I'm just going to leave that alone.
With a novel, I mean, a lot of novelists won't admit this, but the most important, I was going to say thing, but person when it comes to writing a novel is your editor.
Okay.
Because you've got the story out, you know how it is in your head, but an editor should be able to read it as if they're just neutral, as if they don't know you. Yeah. They don't know the backstory. And even my editor who reads my stuff for 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds and 14-year-olds can put their mind into the place of
Okay, and be unbiased.
Yes,
totally unbiased.
And come back and give you really good, intelligent feedback. And sometimes, 1 or 2 times when I challenge it, and I think, well, no, I know better. This is what it was like from me or whatever. But a lot of the time, they're right. That's their skill. And I get a lot of people come to me and they go, hey man, I've got this book, right? I've got this novel and I've written it and I want to get it published, but I don't want anybody to change it. I want to keep it perfect, just as it is. I say, how do you know it's any good? They say, well, my girlfriend said it's good.
She's lying.
Yeah, and my mum said it's good, you know. When somebody that doesn't like you says it's good, then you know it's good, you know what I mean?
It's true.
And you need what academics call peer review. You need people who don't know you to read it and look at it and say, actually, this is a good piece of work. So with a novel, it's different. You can get rough edges, but I mean, this is going to sound like really Radio 4, because I've heard people say this on Radio 4. I was working on my novel, and there I was creating this room, and there was this character and that character in the room, and then this other character came in. I don't know where she came from. She just came, you know, and it sounds really wishy-washy, but it does happen. You know, I've been writing, and I think, so-and-so said that, so-and-so said that, and then somebody comes in and says that, and I go, where did they come from? And I've just created them, but they just kind of walk in and it's...
Maybe that's the rough edge, I guess.
Yeah, exactly, that's the point I'm making, that's the rough edge. I don't then go back and say, well, this wasn't in my earlier draft, or, you know, this happened naturally. And then I let my editor tell me if it's working or not. And sometimes the editor comes back and go, that was a surprise. And I go... And it's just like, you know, you have a strange sound or echo or something you've ad-libbed on your record and somebody says, I like that bit. And you go, well, that's the bit that wasn't scripted. Those are the rough edges that you keep, you know?
It blows my mind. I think the idea of, I don't know, kind of, I guess it's on the same vein, but the idea of, from the way you're talking about it, makes me think about the patience that you need to write something like a novel, though. Because I think that's why I always, I don't know, went to writing poetry or writing songs or writing verses or raps, because, you know, a 16-bar verse is something that is possible for me. I have to apply myself for 10 minutes and I can get it done, and then that's it. But with the idea of it's having something that's like having to sustain your attention over a long period of time on the same story is something that I don't know. I want to write a play, but I don't know if I could do it, because it's about the time and the patience of it.
We're in 2017. Remember this, I'm telling you that you're going to do it. Because what will happen is you'll want to push yourself more in the future. Trust me, you're going to want to stretch yourself. When you've done all you can do in what you're doing now, unless you just drop out of it completely and turn into a milkman. I love milkman, even though I'm vegan. But, you know, you're going to want to stretch yourself. And it may be somebody that comes along and sees it in you and says, you know, have you ever thought of, you know, doing a play? Or there's a character in one of your raps, and let's. So if you want longevity, I'm telling you, you have to stretch yourself and go in different areas. And it's really beautiful, because you can be working on, well, let me tell you about myself. I can be working on a novel, get to what some people would call a writer's block. I don't call it that. I just need space. I'll go and work on an album. I work on the album for a bit, that's not work. I go work on a play. And then if I make an appointment, I have sex. Right? You know? And then after that, You never tried that, man.
I need to do it now. If that's the writer's block,
Exactly, change it.
You changed my heart. Right, I've never been so happy about it. I want to get writer's block now. I do writer's block today, actually.
But when you've got lots of things to do, you're never bored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
And it doesn't become that difficult. It just becomes you come to a stopping point, and later on you're going to come back to it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I forget it all and go and play football.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do. Don't force it, just let it come. And one of the things, I realise I'm pretty privileged in this, but it's a nice position to be in, when you can look at your, I don't know if I should say this, but I'm talking as if it's me and you.
Do, please be.
Right? You can look at your label or your publisher and say, look, I'm not a machine. I can't just churn this stuff out. Right?
Yeah.
I've got to really feel it. For this reason, I've turned down kind of 6-book contracts and stuff like this. I said, I'll do the 6 books.
Yeah, but in my own time when I want to do it.
Yeah, it's going to happen. Because when you're just writing for a contract, it's
wrong.
It's not good. It's soul destroying.
I couldn't agree more. I completely agree.
So spread yourself out, and trust me, if you can create characters and scenarios in music, in the, I was going to say formula, but in the format that you do, there's no reason why you can't. I mean, I think Kate Tempest has done it really well.
Yeah.
She's a storyteller.
Yeah, completely.
And so she lends herself to the novel really.
It just weaves through everything that she does.
Yeah. You can do it, Well, Trust me, I'm a doctor.
I do want to do it. It's daunting, but I think you're right, because I do find that I've got this cooking school for kids with ADHD, and so it's me teaching with a friend of mine, a guy called Mikey. It's called Chili con Carne. Actually, it's an awful name. But but it was I guess it was kind of birthed out of, partly it's something I do like playing football to relax. It's I don't ever think football and cooking are the two things I can go and do that have nothing to do with music that get me back into the idea of doing it. Yeah. But also it was just to stay busy. It's the same thing, because if I'm trying to write something I can't do it, I need something else to do, because otherwise if you're doing one thing all the time you get bored. Like I was studying, I was at drama school actually. I went to drama centre in King's Cross. And I loved, there was parts of it, we studied political speeches, and I got to study Malcolm X for a whole term, and it was the first time I'd ever been given the freedom to study whatever I want. And so obviously I went straight to kind of, I don't know, for me, a hero of mine, or at least like a strong black, positive-ish figure, who was powerful, and it was something special for me. But I don't know. Can't remember where I was going with it.
No, it's about kind of keeping busy and keeping your mind occupied.
Yeah, of course.
And having something outside.
That was the excitement.
Having something outside music.
But it was that going and finding something like that and then bringing that back into the work, I think, was also important. Because if you're sat at a book, you don't find anything new to want to write.
I'm not saying this because you're sitting in front of me, but when I heard your album, it was a real breath of fresh air. I'm going to tell you why. I'm seriously, I'm not saying this because you're in front of me.
No, but it's a big deal for me.
Because the thing is, music recently, first of all, it has very little politics in it. And I don't mean party politics, I mean people commenting about the world. But I think, especially in what you're doing, I find it difficult to call it rap, hip-hop, because there's poetry in there. But what really moved me about it is how personal it was. It's very difficult for you to be with your hip-hop crew and say, well, I'm going to write a poem about my dyslexia, or, not being able to see my dad or whatever. It's all about being big and being bad and how many girls I got and that kind of stuff. You must know Roots Manuva. He's one person that does it really well. But, he's from another generation. He's kind of reggae hip-hop. He's in a world of his own as well. But that's why I really love that piece of work that you did. And to me, it also feels like you decided to just make an album and say what you really felt, rather than thinking of the genre. Rather than thinking of this is a hip-hop. Because you've got jazz influence there, you got that kind of track at the very last bit. Who's that?
That's
your family?
That's my dad. Yeah.
Right.
So my dad. The story goes is my dad. My dad sadly passed away before I kind of really. He knew I started making music, but he made an album in secret that no one knew about, and it wasn't until after he passed away that we found it. Right. And so that tune is a tune from his album. So it's just him and a friend singing. And I don't know. I wanted to put it out for him because he was the one who wanted to be a musician in the family. Yeah. And so it kind of made sense. The song was called Yesterday's Gone. That's why I called the album Yesterday's Gone. But it was like the final thing. Like I couldn't. After my mum speaks the poem at the end, I didn't feel like I could say anything to finish it. But I wanted something else, and I felt he was the only person who could. Yeah.
Man, you got to stay on that track. You got to, because
I promise.
There's a lot of people walking around, putting up a front, and it's fake and it's false and it's kind of going with the flow, going with the gang or whatever, and they're not really getting deep. And things are touching them deeply, but they're not talking about it. So if you can reach them through your music, you're doing a great service for mankind, trust me. And you may not see the benefits of it. You may not see the benefits of it, but you really are doing it. Yeah. Again, we could talk for hours and I can give you examples of my work when it's touched somebody. And especially, I'm sorry for bringing race into it, but especially as a black man. Because, we're supposed to do this, we're supposed to be able to take it all, as if we don't cry, as if we've got no emotions, as if we don't fall out of love and in love, So it's what you're doing is really, really important. And it was a breath of fresh air, man. I really, when I first heard the album, I just went, yeah. And I must say that I heard it completely without knowing you, without knowing I'm going to meet you or anything like that. It was just completely, when I was told I was going to meet you, I'd say, like, my people are here. I said, I just bought that album.
You don't understand what it means. I'm a bit speechless, which is very rare for me.
I thought you were upset because of Aston Villa, but there you go.
I don't. Man, it's an absolute pleasure.
Bro, just keep it up, man.
Fuck.